Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's Bad Brad, another early morning here in Florida. And I want to talk today about walking away from it all. Now, some might say me leaving Nashville, in a way, is walking away from it all. But you know, there's been a few high-profile, musicians in the past. And when they walk away and they disappear from the public eye, everybody wonders, what happened? Where is he? What is he doing? You know, like a guy like John Sykes from Whitesnake. He had his falling out with David Coverdale, I guess, in the making of that album. But meanwhile, the album comes out with a bunch of songs that he wrote, and the thing blows up. And yes, then he does Blue Murder, and, takes a stab at the industry. But ever since that sort of ended, it seemed like John Sykes just dropped off the radar. Now, I know he was on an episode of that metal show, and it looked like he had a project, that they were working on, and he was gonna, do something. But, he's still, what is a day like for John Sykes? What is John Sykes doing? And I think that's what everybody wonders when somebody walks away. Like another Jake E. Lee. He had such a traumatic experience in the industry. Imagine, getting the Ozzy gig, but all the things that went on with the Ozzy gig, and not getting his songwriting credits, and probably paid very poorly for his time with Ozzy. And really, I think even at some point he recently asked, can I have my songwriting credits back? Can I get credit for my work? So for many, many years, Jake E. Lee had disappeared from the spotlight until, maybe 5 years ago, he did Red Dragon Cartel, and he did a tour, and he played some shows, and everybody was, happy to see Jake E. Lee playing again. And I want to talk today about another person that walked away. The band The Romantics. They've got maybe 2 or 3 hits, big hits. But I can remember being at my friend Jeff Zamora's house, the early days of when MTV made it to Virginia, and we would go upstairs at his house, and we were young. We weren't even. I don't even know if we were just starting high school, I guess, and, we had our garage band. So, we were totally, he played keyboards, I played guitar, and we were totally, into it. We were, music was it. That was it, and we will watch MTV, and, in between the Huey Lewis Working for a Living, and Joe Jackson, Mad at You, and Kaja Gugu, and whatever else was on at that time, a video popped up of the Romantics in their pleather suits or whatever it was they were wearing. And this energetic song, What I Like About You, just, the guitars are just hammering out those riffs. These guys, full of energy, way more energy than Huey Lewis in the News, way more energy than Kaja Gugu or Duran Duran. These guys were literally jumping off the screen with energy. And you couldn't help but notice the lead singer of the song, the drummer, Jimmy Marinos. We're just like, dude, look at that guy. Look at that guy. And he just, he had his unique style where he played the hi-hat with his left hand. And so his right hand would be, hitting the snare. And it was, I guess, maybe he was a lefty that, I don't know if anybody knows Jimmy Marinos out there. First of all, man, kudos to that guy, man. I still to this day, think, man, that guy he was like the ultimate rock and roll band drummer. And so we would watch this and we'd see this guy, and he's just full of energy, and his vocal delivery as well. No one could have sang that song and put it on the map the way Jimmy Marinos did. And, so I kind of, I didn't rush out and buy the Romantics album, but I definitely, my ears were perked. And, I think they did maybe, one or two albums after that, kind of What I Like About You blew up. And certainly those guys were probably beating it up on the road night after night. They're from, Detroit, Motor City. And those guys were probably working their tails off, touring and touring and touring and touring. When you're trying to build something. Well, it all peaked with the, what was the name of the album? With Talking in Your Sleep on In Heat. The Romantics, In Heat. And if you look at the album cover on that, it's almost kind of like, Van Halen's album cover, in that each guy has got, his image, 4 images on the cover, the Romantics in Heat, and they're all, they've got their sunken in cheeks. And, now I look at it and see, the shadow is covering one eye on most of the pictures, and that we can get into all that Illuminati nonsense another time. But that album, I went out, so this was a delayed reaction. I knew who the Romantics were, and I saw that album cover and the Romantics, and there's that guy, there's that drummer guy, and I bought that on cassette, and I put that in my little B2000 pickup truck in the stereo system that I put in that, and boom, that cassette comes out, and man, that was one of those cassettes that you could put in and just leave it in and just, and then when the side was done, flip it over, boom, keep going. To me, every song on that, now that is if you haven't heard that album, The Romantics in Heat, it is textbook American rock and roll with some British influence. Obviously, some Beatles influence, some Stones, but with that Detroit energy and flair. And every track on there, they're not all hits, but man, you can put that song, that album on at a party, and it'll get the party started. And you could put that song in your truck or your car, and drive around, and just the energy coming off of that. And from what I understand, I've seen some interviews from that time period where they were working on that album, that Jimmy Marinos, the drummer, he really worked hard with the producer to make sure everything that he played was the right part. And he really, on that album, now he's got a couple songs he sings on that album. You Got Me Where You Want Me, and Shake Your Tail Feather. And, it's just, you see clips from that guy. Now, he also did Rock You Up, and that is a killer song. The thing about the Romantics is it's not like an overdriven clean guitar sound. It's still like a clean sound, and they would play Rickenbackers and Telecasters and Strat. The main guy, Wally Palmer, would play a Strat, but it'd be these like they're still clean guitar sounds, but pushed, like a pushed clean. And they would use like Vox amps and different things. And they really like came together and created this amazing sound. Now, the In Heat album, they had Talking in Your Sleep, which was a huge hit, and they were all over MTV. And you're seeing Jimmy, and he's doing with this, left hand playing the hi-hat, just hitting the snare, man. He's one of those guys, you just go, man, he's back there beating the heck out of those drums. Spirited drummer, and I love a spirited drummer, man. Give me a spirited drummer any day of the week. But, they toured and toured on that album, and then Jimmy walked away. He walked away from the screams. He walked away from the fame. He walked away from the biggest band that he had helped start. And, there's never been a real clear answer as to why he walked away. There's articles out there and says, there's rumored egos run amok. And, Jimmy went on to start the Motor City Rockers, a band where he was fronting the band, and with a heavier sound, maybe in answer to what was going on in LA at the time, and how rock and roll and metal and hard rock had kind of taken over the scene. But, that was an uphill battle for Jimmy. And, people weren't used to him maybe fronting a band. And I'm sure there's clips online of them playing gigs and not as many people in the crowd, and probably traveling in a van, and so it's a long uphill road to try to take something from zero like they did the Romantics, and finally get over that hump and get on MTV and have a huge hit song. So to try to do the uphill battle again, he took a stab at it, but he probably just said, I'm out. And, many, many years later, there was an interview with Brad Elvis, who is, maybe still playing with the Romantics. I'm not sure. They still play shows. But they've been playing all these years without Jimmy Marinos, and the album that they put out without him, was it In Time or something like that? Without his spirited drumming and without his vocal, they took a huge step back, and they weren't able to recapture the magic that had put them on the top for a brief period. And, everybody has to continue. The Romantics guys needed to continue probably to pay their bills and keep the lights on, and they went through a lot of tough years. And they're probably still playing, rib fests and, third tier state fairs and stuff like that. But everybody still wonders, where is Jimmy Marinos? What happened? He's never given an interview, to the best of my knowledge. I'd love to have him on this channel. I'd love to do a Zoom with Jimmy Marinos and get his side of the story. And, because we all wondered, where did they go when a Jakey Lee or a John Sykes or a Jimmy Marinos or any number of guys, and some of my friends I've known, walk away, when they walk away from the screams, when they walk away from the fame, when they walk away from whatever money they were making, Where do they go? What do they do? What is a day like for Jimmy Marinos? Now, Brad Elvis had said in an interview that that Jimmy Marinos hadn't been off the couch for 20 years because of the royalties from What I Like About You. Now, I know the song has been used in advertising. It's still a huge song. It's probably every now and then ends up in a film. And he may be right. Maybe Jimmy, living in Detroit and having a house back then didn't cost a whole lot of money. It's not a super expensive place to live now. So he may be right. Now, I've found some pics online that say they're from 2008, and it's Jimmy Marinos, going to see a friend in a club or whatever. And I'm not sure that photo's from 2008, but if it is, Jimmy, you're looking good, man. Now, apparently, prologue, Jimmy came back to the Romantics in 1996, and through 96 through part of 97. And he did some shows with the band. I haven't been able to find any footage of that. And he played on an album that they were working on, but eventually he left. He probably just said, this is not all it's cracked up to be, and I don't have to be here. So, lucky for him, they had a huge hit. What I Like About You has had a long shelf life. It keeps the energy that he put on that track, and that spirited vocal, and those crispy, clean guitars, and that energy that band was putting out has carried that song through time. And anytime a kid, my little 3-year-old daughter, if I put on What I Like About You, she goes crazy. She dances around the living room and she air guitars and she loves it. So I salute you, Jimmy Marinos. Thank you for your service, sir. Thank you, John Sykes. Thank you, Jakey Lee. And thank you to all the weekend warriors who one day, and we all will one day, walk away. I salute you, compadre.